hold on. We're having a conversation over here at Bad Guy Inc. I'm getting up to leave. I made my pieces for you, my podcast done. I'm getting ready to leave. We start having a conversation. Go, hey, wait, turn the camera back on. Let's just bring the audience in on this. Now, here was the question. And it had to do with the White House event specifically. But I don't know that the conversation is relevant to that, but I'll just share what we were talking about over here and said, hey, look, would the UFC book Jon Jones for that event? You know, largely, what does it mean that Jon's back in the pool? Now, oddly enough, I had a video sent to me today, and I think it was on YouTube. It could have been Instagram, but you know how they have the algorithms, and then they make these suggestions to you, and I clicked on it. It had to do with when Dana White was going to box Tito, but the preface of that was how much Dana hated Tito. He just hated working with him. And Tito was said that, like, before a fight, you'd have a deal done, you'd have the marketing done. It's before a fight. It's 2 days before a fight. Then he would go to the company and go, hey, you got to pay me more money or I'm not coming through the curtain. And there was just things like this that had just driven him crazy. But within the piece that I watched, they said, and this is a narrator doing a voiceover, but he said, Dana hated Tito so much he wanted to box him. Dana had all these problems with Tito's business practices. But hear these words. But Dana was forced to work with him because Tito was the champion. And I can just tell you, look, I've been at the UFC for 18 years. And everywhere you go, there's a culture. There's things that you pick up on. That is the way it would work. No matter how irritated Dana was, Dana would respect the UFC's belt. And he would find a way to get that guy to the cage if he promised you he was going to get that guy to the cage. That's true. And I bring that to you because we're left to guess. What does this mean about Jon? Now, I would like you to know, I'm not being my usual dick of a self towards Jon. I am genuinely curious how this will go. And there was a leverage by Tito. Now, UFC could have ignored it. They could have ignored it and gone right on with business. It's not as though we were being covered by SportsCenter. It's not as though Le Breton is doing a segment on it or Jim Rome is doing a segment on it. I mean, you got to go find this on the underground forum. But Dana respected the belt enough that he didn't do any of those things. He found a way to get the champion, in this case Tito, to the ring. Now, fighting at the White House, no political statement here. Fighting at the White House and in any administration will be viewed by the guys as a reward. The guys that get put on that card will say, thank you. Thank you for booking me on this card. The guys are going to the matchmakers already now. I, as a commentator, have already gone to Dana and said, hey, will you make sure that I'm calling that event? It's one of these things. It's like Sphere. But I would imagine higher. I would imagine there would be a greater enthusiasm. And the reason I say that, I do not believe in this current situation that Jon is going to be met with a reward. Now let's back off when he's not met with a reward. Can he just get a fight? Simple as that. Can he just get a fight? And we're in an interesting time because the decision to turn the page from Jon Jones has been made. But there's no hard feelings. It was made by Jon. All the rest of us just had to accept it. And regardless how much prodding and teasing that a community might do towards Jon, it's actually rooted in being a fan. We just want to see Jon fight. And then you decide whether it's because you want to see his greatness and you see his figure, or you want to see the guy that's going to stop him. You decide that as a fan. But that's where all of that comes from. Now, because Tom doesn't have an opponent, that's the only thing that leaves a level of speculation open about this. Very few people have walked away from the belt. And very few people have walked away from the belt and stayed in good graces. It is viewed very disrespectfully, whether you see it that way or not. I'm sharing history, which I can tie back to a courtroom in Las Vegas that had BJ Penn and counsel on one side, Dana White and counsel on the other. You don't just walk away from the belt. The same way as whatever has to be done, regardless of how painful, to get Tito to the cage because he's the champion. That same respect is expected in return. Now, let me just give you a recent example. But it was Henry Cejudo. UFC 246. Reason I remember that is it was first event since COVID. Henry wins. And he grabs the mic and he retires. But he had made a comment, and whether it was in the ring or it was at the post-fight press conference, Henry made a comment. Hey, Dana, you got my number. Or it was, hey, Dana, you know my number. And then we all had to guess. Does that mean call me? Hey, Dana, you got my number. Does that mean call me? Or does that mean I got a price tag attached and you know what it is? And we've actually never found out. But either way, Dana just said, listen, that's a decision that will be made by Henry. We're not going to force him out. We aren't even going to bring it up. Didn't even know this was going to come up. But that's a decision that'll be made by Henry. I don't argue with guys that think it's time to retire. Dana said, I'm going to travel tomorrow. I'm going to be in the war room, that's the matchmaker's room, on Tuesday, and we are going to book a 135-pound world title fight. Henry will let us know if he's won half of that in defending or if we got to put up a vacant belt. This is how this was handled and nothing else. Now, down the line, Henry realized, hey, I still want to do this. And when he came back, he didn't walk right into a title fight. Here's your world champion that never got beat. Here's your 2-division world champion. Here's your Olympic gold medalist, 2-division world champion. He never got beat. When he returned, he didn't return to a title fight. He didn't return to a main event. He returned to find out this is all moving along. There's been some fights while you've been gone. They adjusted the rankings. They're going to need to rework you in to the ranks. I mean, it was one of these things, and it was completely accepted through our community. It was even accepted by Henry. Henry didn't come back and say, I should be fighting for the belt. All right. You then have the most recent example, which is Francis. And I get that there's more to the Francis story. I'm just trying to share with you a more recent example of somebody that walked away from the belt and then tried to come back. And it's very tough to guess what would happen with Jon in the absence of Tom being booked. That's the only part of this where there wouldn't be a very similar statement as the narrator gave about the frustrations of working with Tito but being forced to work with Tito. The only way anyone walks back into a toxic or unpleasant environment, right? It's not willingly. And so to answer the question being asked over here at Bad Guy Inc., will Jon be fighting for a title at the White House? I mean, there's so many problems. In baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. You got Jon fighting. You got title, and you got at the White House. I have a very hard time believing all three of those are going to come together.